Maharaj. Uh, Thank you very much for your words of encouragement, Srila Acharya Dev. We are very much blessed by you. Uh, Now, Sripad Bhakti Mahadev Puri Maharaj, if you can kindly uh, offer your offering. Very
Thank you.
happy.
Thank you. Sripad Bhakti Nishkam Shanta Maharaj. Although we are on our own very worthless, if somehow we can do a little service and or offer some glorification to the Vaishnavas, that is the only benefit that we really have in our life. Uh, so today I just wanted to say something about the incredible loving relationship that Srila Damodara Maharaj had with Srila Prabhupada and Prabhupada's relationship to Srila Damodara Maharaj. So let me offer my Dandavat pranams, Srila Acharya Maharaj, and our whole Guru Varga, Govinda Maharaj, Srila Govinda Maharaj, Srila Srila Maharaj, Srila Srila Damodara Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, Srila Niskam Shanta Muni Maharaj, all the devotees of Vaishnavas that are here today. And if I can give a little bit of what I observed in my brief association with Sri Damodara Maharaj about, as I said, the loving relationship between him and Srila Prabhupada, then I feel I have done something useful. So Srila Damodara Maharaj came to the U.S. in 1967 when he, or completing his degree in chemistry at the Canisius College in Buffalo, New York, where he got his master's degree. And then from there, in 1969, when he completed that, he went to University of California in Irvine to do his PhD thesis. And that he completed in 1974. And in that same year, he did a one-year postdoc at Emory University in Georgia. And by the time that was in 1976, and he also got his permanent visa to as a and for the United States. Well, then during his PhD thesis in 1970, he got the sad news from Manipur that his mother had died. He had been away from Manipur for 4 years by that time, and he hadn't even thought about Manipur. He was so busy with his studies that it came as a shock to him to learn that his mother had died. And of course, he wanted to go back to India to perform the Shraddha ceremony. He had no money to do that, so he had to ask the university for some loan. And he was able to collect the money, but then his uncle wrote back to Sri Damodara, who was at T.D. Singh at that time, Totem Damodar Singh, that's where the T.D. comes from. Totem Damodar Singh was his name. And he wrote back to him, he said, don't come to India. There's no use in wasting your time on bodily concerns. Said, you are a Vaishnava, and a Vaishnava, according to the Bhagavad Gita, has no concern for the living or the dead. Says Vaishnava should not lament for neither the living nor the dead. So at that time, he then was convinced that he did not go back, but he felt very dejected, and he lost interest in all of his studies. And he began to contemplate what is the real meaning of life. His life is so temporary. what is the real meaning that we are here. During that time, he was feeling very dejected. His friend was, at that time, Dr. Ravindra Pradeep Rao, came to see him and tried to cheer him up. And one day they were driving and in Laguna Beach, and they saw the devotees chanting. Dr. Rao became very interested and said we should try to follow them and see where they're going. Somehow they were seen by the devotees and they invited them to come back to the temple in Laguna Beach. Dr. Rao was very eager to do that, and he went to the temple many times and invited Sri Damodara Maharaj to come with him, Dr. Singh. But Sri Damodara was not very anxious to do that. He had said he had his studies to take care of it, so he was conscientiously doing all of that at the time. Finally, the devotees told Mr. Rao at that time that Prabhupada was staying at the Los Angeles temple and he could go there and visit him. He did that, and when Prabhupada saw him at first, he remarked, he said, you have been sent by Lord Krishna. I have been praying to Lord Krishna to send me at least one Indian boy to help me in my mission. Very immediately, that relationship between Dr. Rao and Prabhupada was established. And soon thereafter, Rao was initiated and was given the very auspicious name, Ramananda Roy. Afterwards, he tried to convince Dāmodara Maharaj to come and see Prabhupada. But at that time, Dr. Singh was not interested in seeing any Swamijis from India. He said he had already seen so many sadhus, and he was not interested in that anymore. Anyhow, finally, his friend, Ramananda Roy now, said, if you don't come to see Sri Prabhupada with me, then I'm not going to be your friend anymore. So at that, Sri Damodara had to go with him. And when he met Prabhupada, he was very impressed at first by his chanting, his sweet singing, sweet kirtan. And then finally went up to his room to meet Prabhupada personally and told her that he was from Manipur. And Prabhupada immediately understood that he was a Vaishnava from the Manipur area, which was the most intense Vaishnava culture left in India. So he wanted to encourage us, Sri Dāmodara Maharaj, why have you come to the West to get scientific knowledge? You can come, you should do like I did. I came here not to take, but to give Bhagavad culture to others. You kindly try to do that yourself. And then like that, Sri Damodara's heart was transformed. And he also became initiated that same month that Dr. Rao became. And Prabhupada gave him the name Swarup Damodar. Here they had both the most auspicious names of the most intimate, closest intimate associates of Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar. Then, in that year, the same year, 1974, when Swarup Damodar had completed his thesis, his PhD thesis, he finally went back to India. And the first thing he wanted to do was to meet Srila Prabhupada and told him, I have made my thesis, I completed my thesis, and I dedicated it to you, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased out of his affection, sweet affection that Damodara Maharaj had for Prabhupada. And he also presented him one book that he had written. That book was called The Scientific Basis of Krishna Consciousness. I don't know how many have seen that book, but it was widely distributed. Hundreds of thousands of copies were made. But that book and his thesis, in this way, he'd try to please Srila Prabhupada by his service. So at that time also, Prabhupada began to express many things about the developments that were going on in ISKCON at that time. By the middle of the year, in the summer of that year, then out of so much love for Swarup Damodara Maharaj, what he had done for him, he wanted to do something in exchange. So he asked Maharaj, at that time he was Swarup Damodara, that you kindly establish the academic wing of ISKCON. And not generally recognized by the devotees, that Prabhupada wanted Swarup Damodara to be the founder and director of the academic branch of ISKCON. It was Swarup Damodara that he asked to do this, and so he proposed to Prabhupada that the name of this institute should be Bhaktivedanta Institute, and Prabhupada accepted that, and thus it became the founder director of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and that was given to him. Prabhupada did not himself make himself the founder, but he made that to Swarup Damodara. And I understand that to be the very deep affection Prabhupada had for Swarup Damodara, and Swarup Damodara's connection with Srila Prabhupada in the same way. Then Swarup Damodara drew up a logo for the institute at that time and showed it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada suggested that we should also add the name to the logo, the phrase Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which is the first line of the Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire about spirit. Now that you are a human being, inquire about spirit. Then Prabhupada suggested that they start the institute in Vrindavan, because they were staying in Vrindavan during this time. And he asked his godbrother, Ban Maharaj, who had established the Oriental Institute in Vrindavan, if he would kindly turn over his property to Swarup Damodara for establishing the Bhaktivedanta Institute. As it turned out, that was not, and did not come to be. And so Prabhupada said, anyhow, later on when the Krishna Balaram temple was established, that they would make the institute and the Gurukul there in Vrindavan and have their own facilities. Then after that, Swarup Damodara went back to America to finish his postdoc, which he completed in 1976. In the meantime, Rupanuga Prabhu, a very dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada, helped us establish a place to do our service in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1975, then Prabhupada came to Atlanta, and we all went there, myself and Sariputta, Swarup Damodara, and we talked with him about our preaching the scientific work. In Atlanta, then the next year after that, in 1976, Prabhupada came to Washington, D.C., and again, we all met with Srila Prabhupada, and he discussed, the first time he discussed making a model of the universe and a planetarium he mentioned to us. And then at the end of that year, we all gathered again under Rupanuga's guidance, and we formally registered the Bhaktivedanta Institute. And there, then in 1977, at the beginning of the year, around March, the Juhu Temple was in Mumbai was completed. Excuse me. And Prabhupada went to the top floor of that building, newly constructed building, and all the devotees gathered with him. We did not know that would be the last time we would see Prabhupada in Mumbai. And he was speaking very lovingly to all the devotees. And he turned to Dāmodara and told him, after all of his work, that the next phase would be yours. He said that you can make this Krishna consciousness, present this Krishna consciousness in a scientific way. And then, in the middle of the year, around May of 1977, Prabhupada's health took a turn for the worse. And every day he was talking to Srila Damodara Mahārāja about the Bhaktivedanta Institute and scientific preaching. And seeing his his life was not in a good, his health was not in a very good shape. So Damodara wanted to encourage him, Prabhupada, and told, we're going to hold a conference here in Vrindavan, scientific conference too, so that your dreams can be, your dreams for the Institute can be shown, can be exhibited for you. So Sri Damodara suggested that the name of the conference would be the Bhaktivedanta Vigyan Conference. And Prabhupada said, no, that won't be accepted as serious by the scientists. So he suggested it should be titled the First International Life Comes from Life Conference. Like that. Prabhupada wanted the scientists to take very seriously what he was telling, what he was teaching. So after that, it would take a great deal of effort by Sri Damodara Maharaj to do that conference, but anyhow, he had to go back to America, and there we worked together on producing some monographs. Some of the monographs, I don't know if you have seen, by Sariputta and Sri Damodara Maharaj on the demonstration by information theory that life comes from life, mechanistic and non-mechanistic science, and life comes from life, monograph by Sri Damodara. So many little preaching publications we had to prepare. And then after all that intense publications, he had to go back to India. And in a short time, in October, we held a conference there and collected some of the scientists from Delhi to come to Vrindavan, and myself and Sri Damodara and Sariputta and Brahmatirtha Prabhu. We all met, Gyanadas. We all met there and held a nice conference, little conference. But Prabhupada was very pleased. He understood what Sri Damodara had done, and he was very pleased with that. And then, of course, in the next month, November, Prabhupada left us, at least physically, and Sri Damodara was constantly there assisting Prabhupada in his last days. And he was always talking very enthusiastically about the scientific preaching. And Sri Damodara there was there at his side, and he heard the last words of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada said. He told us this was the last words when he expired. From that time, of course, Sri Damodara Maharaj traveled throughout the world. He met many Nobel laureate scientists, as Shanta Maharaj explained, spreading Krishna consciousness and in a scientific way. And today, in India, Santa Maharaj is always telling how the scientists there have accepted, many of the scientists there, and also here, that life comes from life is a genuinely scientific, observable principle, and that science like physics and so forth are more about the non-living world, but the living world is the main science, is essential science, and all these subordinate sciences are there also. But the main science is that life comes from life, based upon that principle. So we give our humble dandavats again to Srila Damodara Maharaj on his disappearance day. And we pray that you may all give your blessings to us so that we continue in some kind of service, some type of glorification of Damodara Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. My dandavats to you all. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat,
Came.
Dandavat, Joy, Sripad
Srila
Bhaktivinoda Puri
Janardhan
Maharaj.
Maharaj came.
Dandavat, Srila Janardhan Maharaj, Bhakti Janardhan.